Alrighty, hello everybody. Today I'm going to show you how to make a retro chrome looking text effect in Photoshop. We are working with a 6 by 4 inch canvas at 300 dpi, and we went ahead and made the background back. You could do that using the fill tool there. So we are going to go ahead and type out retro here, drag that out a little more. Okay. Center that. Perfect. I think there might be an extra little piece in there. Alrighty. Then we are going to go ahead and click on the effects here, go to bevel and emboss. I'm going to reset everything to default, and we're going to set the depth all the way up to 1000 here, and then shrink the size down to 6 to give a nice clean edge there. We're going to go and set our highlights to 20% and our shadows to 20%. And then we're going to come over here to the contour box, click in there, and drag the range down to 0. Make sure everything else is good in there. Alrighty. We're going to go ahead and drag this text into its own folder so that when we apply something via a mask, it'll just apply to the text overall and the effects on it. We're going to go ahead and create a new layer now and get the gradient tool up and select black and white gradient, and then right from the bottom up to the top of the text. And we can always go through and change this later if we need to. We're going to go here and set the layer to overlay and then make it a clipping mask over the text here. And that needs to be outside of it. There we go. After that, we can go ahead and make a gradient map. So we're going to go ahead and down here and click on layers and then go to gradient map. We want to go ahead and make sure that this is part of the clipping mask on here. And then we're going to go up to the properties tab, click on this little guy up here, and we will go ahead and select this right here. This is one that a gradient that I had created earlier. It looks a little funky right now, so what we can do is make a couple of adjustments. And a lot of this just takes like some experimentation to see what looks good. And again, as we work with this, we can always come back and make any necessary changes. So we'll drag that down there. Get that back in there later. Alrighty. So that's good right about there. And again, we can always go through and change that whenever we want. So we're going to come back to the text layer here, and we're going to go down to the FX and add an inner shadow. And that is, let's go ahead and reset to default. The inner shadow is going to add these curves to the text to kind of give it that warped, kind of bendy, almost reflected look. And we're going to go ahead and set the opacity to 25% here, set the distance to 0, and then our size to 25. Alright. After that, we're going to go ahead and add a stroke onto the text here. We're going to reset to default just so I can show you how to get through to this. Our size is going to be the same size as our bevel and emboss, so we're going to make it 6. Position is going to be inside, blend mode is fine. And then we want to set the opacity to 20%, set the fill type to gradient, And then we're going to come into the gradient here and drag this to 50%, create a new color here and make that black to have a nice white stripe in the center there. We're going to change the style to shape burst, and then make sure we select this overprint here. And then blend mode, we're going to go ahead and set to screen. All right. So then we're going to go ahead, close that out, click on the group here, and create an outer glow. Go ahead and reset that down to default again. Set the opacity to 25%. We can go ahead and keep the blend mode as is, and the screen, the color, we're going to make a violety, kind of light violety, and set the size to 50 pixels. And we'll go ahead and drop this color a little more. We don't want it to be super, super bright. All right. From there, we're going to go ahead and go back up to bevel and emboss, and we're going to stay on the group here, just so we can apply it again. Reset everything back to default. We're going to set our size again to 6 pixels here. And we're going to go and click the contour again, drop the range to 0. And let's see here. Click on our little contour graph. And we're going to set this here and drag this up to, oh, sorry. We're going to set the input to 98%. Okay. Then we're going to go ahead and go back to the Bevel and Emboss tab, turn off the global light, and set our altitude here to 80%. On our, let's see, going to go ahead and then click on our gloss contour. I'm going to drag this up to 98%. Let's see here. Drag that all the way up, and then we're going ahead and set our input to 98%, and our input can stay at 100. And that's going to give us this little white line around here that's going to drag some of these dark spots up. We're going to change our highlight mode to linear dodge and set that to a 70% opacity. And that is good there. And again, that gives us that tiny little white line that kind of highlights it and kind of gives it that extra little glow that it needs. Go ahead and click OK. Now the next thing we're going to do is a little bit safer if we rasterize the text. So we're going to go ahead and do that now. And set that like that. And then before we change anything else with the text here, we're going to create a new layer above our little horizon kind of line that we have here, but below our gradient map. And then we're going to go ahead and go to Filter, Render, Clouds. And then after that, we're going to stay on that same layer, go to Filter, Render, Filter, Blur, and then we're going to go to Gaussian Blur. We're going to keep that at 7%. And then we're going to go change our blending mode to overlay, and then lower that opacity down to 5%. Actually, let's see, we can mess around with that a little more, give it a little more depth. Let's try 9%. Just kind of give it that nice varied kind of almost like horizon kind of look there. Next thing we're going to do is go down to our text here, and we're going to click Control T, transform. We're going to go up to this little button up here to start a warp, and then we're going to go to Arc Upper. We're going to drag it down to give it a little bit of an arch downward like this. We're going to hit Enter, and then we're going to drag this up manually to kind of rebalance the size a little bit so it's not so squished. Then we're going to go through and do the exact same thing with our horizon here, and that we just Control T, same thing, and then we'll just do arch for this one. Zoom out a little. Drag this down and try to match our curvature to the text as best as we can. Go ahead and enter. We can go ahead and move our gradient up just so it's not so low on the text. And I think that looks good right about there. Go ahead and zoom back in on that. Alright, so now the next thing we're going to do is create a new layer. And fill it with black. And then we're going to go to Filter, Render, Lens Flare. And we're going to select the 105 millimeter, set the brightness to 50%, and try to center it as best as you can. We're going to go ahead and set the over to screen. And then go ahead and transform this down to about there. And try and position it almost like a little sun coming up over the horizon here. We're going to go ahead and change the color by pressing Control U on the layer. And try and get that to be a dramatic color. Kind of make it stand out a little more. There we go. Then we'll go ahead and Alt-click and drag over to each of our letters here, so we can have one on each of them. Go ahead and position that wherever you feel like it would fit best. Feel like it would look good there. Alright, and we're going to do the exact same thing again. We're going to create a new layer, fill it with black, go up to Filter, Render, Lens Flare. This time we're going to click on our movie prime here, set the layer type to screen again, shrink that down real small. Might do even smaller than that, right about there. And we can go ahead and change the color of that again using Control U. We want to try and get that to match, make it a nice little bright, kind of a highlight to that color. There we go. Bring that up to our bright white spots, kind of emphasize those bright parts. Get it right about there. There we are. And there we have it. Looks a little funky on some of these pieces, but again, you can kind of adjust the way that looks by moving around the horizon. Put it right about there again. Alrighty. Thanks for watching, and I hope this was useful.